The only gender-based analysis I want to see done by the federal government is for them to tell me how many Indigenous women have been denied a job and robbed of economic opportunity because the federal government continues to hold up resource projects. Today, we have access to information documents showing that even the federal government knows that Indigenous women would love a resource sector job.
Gender impact, how does that fit into a pipeline approval process?
So I'm really glad you asked that, because I think people are like, well, what is this gender thing? Well, imagine that you have a huge number of people going to a remote community, many men. What is the impact on the community? What is the impact on women in the community? And actually, once again, smart proponents understand this, so they're going to put measures in place. That's all it is. It's just taking a smart approach to thinking about, okay, what's going to be the impact of a major development in a particular area?
That person is Canada's former Environment Minister, now Infrastructure Minister, explaining the need to shoehorn gender concerns into the approvals process for major energy projects here in Canada. Minister McKenna is implying that a sudden influx of economic activity to a region driven by a largely male workforce, you know, our brothers, dads, and husbands, would somehow endanger the women in the places they're working. And so now every new project has to undergo something called a gender-based analysis plus. I still have many questions about what this whole thing entails. And apparently so does the public. They, like me, have been filing for access to information to find out what this new gender pipelines nuttiness involves. This here is a proactive release, meaning someone else, we don't know who, asked for this information through access to information, and they received it, and now that information is being proactively released to the public. It's from Natural Resources Canada. The filer asked, I'm looking to access any draft or final versions of the gender-based analysis that took place for Site C and for the Trans Mountain Expansion Project, as well as any documents pertaining to the analyses. What we see here are hundreds of redacted pages, leaving behind just 37 pages in total, and most of those pages were either duplicates or left in to explain why the hundreds of others were redacted. This on one of the Liberals' flagship policies, on two huge energy sector projects that the Liberals have promoted on national TV in Canada and on an international stage, the way Trudeau did at the G20 meeting in Buenos Aires in 2018. It all seems a bit ridiculous, odd, and unlikely. Just 37 pages of analysis available to the public on two major projects combined. Either the Liberals are not turning over all the information, or they don't know what the gender-based analysis plus is either, but they know it sounds kind of feministy, like a fun progressive thing to do. However, we also see a couple of facts that don't support the Liberals and the Green Movement's attacks on the resource sector. Let's take a look together, shall we? First, let me show you what the GBA Plus is. It's on page 34 of 37. The GBA Plus is an analytical tool the federal government uses to examine the impacts of a policy, program, or initiative on diverse groups of women and men and girls and boys, taking into account gender and other identity factors. The plus in the name highlights that gender-based analysis plus goes beyond gender and includes the examination of a range of other intersecting identity factors such as age, education, language, geography, culture, and income. The GBA Plus is applied at every stage of development of a policy, program, or other initiative to identify these potential differential impacts. It goes on and on from there. I know, I still don't get it either. I'm probably even more confused than before. Men and women, gay or straight, Caucasian or otherwise, we all need jobs to feed ourselves and our families and build our futures. That's the Sheila Gunn Reid Gender-Based Analysis Plus. You're welcome. Now on page 27, we see a bit of a fun fact that First Nations women are doing pretty well in the labor force, better than their male counterparts. Nationally, women had an unemployment rate of 1.4% lower than their male counterparts, while for Aboriginal people, a similar dynamic was observed in the rate for Aboriginal women, just over 1 percentage point lower than Aboriginal men. And Aboriginal women entrepreneurship is growing at twice the rate of non-Aboriginal women. That's good news. The Liberals' labor market survey of Indigenous women shows that they would also love the opportunity to work in the resource sector, despite the fear marketing campaign about male resource sector employees. Look at this on page 30. The respondents of the survey were asked if they worked in the resource extraction industry, and of the 109 who answered, 2/3 had never been employed in these sectors. However, this survey also indicates that almost 57% of the respondents had lived close in proximity to a natural resource development. So they have some awareness. When asked whether natural resource development has brought positive benefits to the community, only 20% of respondents thought so. 33% thought not, and 36% did not know one way or the other. So to be clear, the majority of respondents actually thought resource development had either benefited their community or they didn't actually have a strong opinion one way or another. Now, here's the really good news, though. This survey did indicate that if an opportunity is made available to them, a significant amount of Aboriginal women would seek employment careers in the resource extraction industry if a number of real and or perceived barriers were eliminated. And if we go down further on the page, we can see the number one barrier to them is childcare, housing support, training, and expertise. So real barriers to employment that we can address as a society without demonizing the energy industry and the men who work in it. Indigenous women have not been fooled, despite all the fear-mongering from Catherine McKenna and Justin Trudeau about the dangers of men who stay in man camps to work in pipeline construction or in resource extraction. These women would take a job in resource extraction if they could, and I hope they do. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. At Rebel News, we tell the other side of the story, from the First Nations success stories in the resource sector to the failures of Dr. Theresa Tam. These are stories you won't hear about in the mainstream media. And unlike the mainstream media, we don't rely on Justin Trudeau to keep the lights on and to do our news reports. We rely on the support of people like you at home. If you'd like to support the work that we do, we've made it actually pretty easy. We've got a special website. Just go to helprebelnews.com.